Nothing says marital bliss quite like finding your wife's burner phone at 2 in the morning while looking for aspirin in her purse. The headache I'd been nursing suddenly felt like a pinprick compared to the migraine brewing as I scrolled through months of text messages that made my 15-year marriage look like a bad joke. Can't wait to feel you inside me again, baby. Jason's working late tomorrow night. Same hotel? The reply from Scotty made my hands shake. Your husband's an idiot. How hasn't he figured this out yet? Laura's response. He's too busy playing with his little property assessments to notice anything. Poor pathetic Jason thinks I'm at book club, LOL. I'm Jason Fairburn, 38 years old, and apparently the biggest fool in Millbrook, Ohio. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to keep our family afloat in this Rust Belt town that's seen better decades, my wife Laura had been conducting her own private real estate transactions with Scott Williams, her sleazy coworker at Premium Properties. The phone buzzed in my hand. New message from Scotty. Your mother-in-law wants to meet me tomorrow. Think she suspects? Laura, mom's just being mom. She actually likes you better than Jason already. Says you have ambition, unlike my loser husband. I set the phone down carefully on our kitchen counter, the same counter where Laura had kissed me goodbye that morning, telling me she loved me. The same counter where we'd planned our daughters' futures, where we'd argued about bills and laughed about stupid movies. Now it felt contaminated. Beth, our 14-year-old, had asked me last week why mom was always busy and why she seemed so happy lately. I'd told her that adults sometimes go through phases. Turns out, Laura's phase involved getting railed by Scott Williams every Tuesday and Thursday at the Riverside Inn. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my recliner, staring at the photos on our mantel. Laura and me on our wedding day, both of us young and stupid and convinced we'd beat the odds. The girls as toddlers, gap-toothed and innocent. Family vacations, where we actually seemed to like each other. Nuh. The front door opened at 12:47 a.m. I'd been watching the clock, wondering what lie she'd tell this time. Jason, you're up late. Laura's voice carried that artificial sweetness she used when she felt guilty. She looked good, too good for someone coming home from book club. Fresh makeup, hair perfect, that satisfied glow that I used to think was from a glass of wine with her girlfriends. Couldn't sleep, I said, not looking at her. How was book club? Oh, you know how it is. Margaret went on and on about that romance novel. I swear, that woman lives vicariously through those trashy books. She kicked off her heels and padded toward the kitchen. I'm exhausted. I bet you are, I thought. What book are you reading this month? A pause. Just a heartbeat, but I caught it. Something by Nicholas Sparks. You wouldn't be interested. Nicholas Sparks. The woman who'd once told me she'd rather eat glass than read manipulative romantic garbage was now claiming to discuss The Notebook with her book club. If I weren't so angry, I might have laughed at how pathetic her lies had become. I left some papers on the counter for you to look at, she called from the kitchen. I found her bent over the kitchen island, and for a moment, muscle memory kicked in. I wanted to wrap my arms around her waist, kiss her neck, tell her about my day. Instead, I looked at the papers she'd left next to her burner phone. It was a bill, from her mother, Mrs. Dorothy Carver, itemized on actual letterhead from her late husband's old law practice. Services rendered in raising Laura Carver Fairburn. $47,000. I read it twice, certain I was hallucinating. Legal fees for emotional guidance during formative years, $15,000. Nutritional support ages 0 to 18, $18,000. Educational enrichment and character development, $14,000. What the hell is this? Laura turned around, and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Cold calculation. Mom thinks it's only fair. She invested a lot in making me who I am, and now that I'm successful, she deserves compensation. She wants us to pay her $47,000 for being a mother? For being an exceptional mother, Laura corrected. Look, Jason, I know it seems weird, but Mom's right. She sacrificed a lot for me. Now that my career is taking off, we can afford to show some gratitude. I stared at my wife of 15 years, this woman I'd loved since college, and realized I was looking at a stranger. And if I refuse, then maybe we need to reconsider some things. Her voice was steady, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this conversation. I'm not the same person I was when we got married, Jason. I have opportunities now, people who value what I bring to the table. People like Scott Williams, I thought, but didn't say. Not yet. I need to think about this, I said finally. Don't think too long. Mom's expecting an answer by Friday. She headed upstairs, and I heard the shower start, washing off the evidence of her Tuesday night activities, no doubt. I sat there with her mother's invoice and her burner phone, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The shower stopped, and Laura's voice drifted down. "Oh, and Jason? I might be late tomorrow night too. Big client dinner." I almost smiled. Tomorrow was Thursday. Hotel night with Scotty. "Sure thing, honey," I called back. "You do what you need to do, and I would too." Wednesday morning arrived gray and bitter, typical for Millbrook in March. I made coffee and watched Laura get ready for work, marveling at how someone could lie so effortlessly. She hummed while applying lipstick, the same shade I'd bought her for Christmas, the same shade Scott Williams would be tasting tomorrow night. "You seem cheerful," I observed. "Big presentation today. Could mean a promotion." She kissed my cheek, and I fought the urge to wipe it off. "What are your plans?" "Property assessments. The Riverside District." I watched her face carefully. The Riverside Inn sat right in the middle of my assessment zone. No reaction. She was good, I'd give her that. After Laura left, I called my boss and took a personal day. Then I drove to Gus's gym, a converted warehouse downtown, where I'd been boxing since the layoffs 5 years ago. Gus Martinez had been a semi-pro fighter back in the day. Now he trained guys like me who needed somewhere to hit things legally. "You look like hell, Fairburn," Gus said as I wrapped my hands. "Wife keeping you up nights?" "Something like that." I started working the heavy bag, and the rhythm felt good, therapeutic. "Whatever's eating you, don't take it out on my equipment." But Gus was grinning. He liked it when his guys brought real anger to their training. I spent 2 hours beating the hell out of that bag, then sat in my truck in the gym parking lot and made a phone call to Diana Cross, the best divorce attorney in town. I'd looked her up online. Tough, smart, and rumor had it she didn't lose often. "Mr. Fairburn, what can I do for you?" "I need to understand my options, hypothetically speaking." "Hypothetically, you should come in for a consultation. How's tomorrow at 3? "Perfect." That evening, I cooked dinner for Beth and Janie while Laura worked late. Real work this time, apparently, since it was only Wednesday. The girls chatted about school and friends, normal kid stuff that felt precious now that I knew everything was about to change. "Dad, is Mom okay?" Beth asked as we cleaned dishes. "She's been acting weird lately," out of the mouths of babes. "Weird how?" "I don't know. Happy, but like, fake happy, and she's always on her phone now." Janie nodded. "She told Mrs. Pitterson that you were getting a big promotion, but you didn't get a promotion, did you?" "Smart kids. Too smart. Your mom's just excited about some things happening at work. Sometimes adults get carried away." Laura came home around 10, full of apologies and stories about difficult clients. I nodded and made appropriate sounds while she talked. Studying this woman, I'd thought I knew. When had she become such an accomplished liar? Had she always been this good at deception, or was this a new skill she'd developed for Scott Williams? "Oh, I forgot to mention," she said as we got ready for bed. "Tomorrow night is that client dinner I mentioned. The Hendersons. They're looking at some really expensive properties. Could be huge for my commission." "Sounds important." "It is. This could change everything for us, Jason. Finally get us out of this rut we've been in." The rut. As if our marriage was some kind of financial inconvenience she needed to escape from. As if 15 years together was just dead weight holding back her brilliant career. I waited until she was asleep, then took her burner phone from her purse and photographed every message. The evidence was damning, not just the affair, but conversations about our marriage that made my stomach turn. "Jason's so pathetic lately, moping around like a kicked dog. Maybe he senses something. Losers have good instincts about losing. I almost feel bad for him. Almost. Then I remember how boring our sex life is, and I get over it. Can't wait to leave him. Think he'll cry? Probably. He's the crying type." I put the phone back and lay in bed next to my wife, listening to her breathe. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, shared dreams and inside jokes, and quiet Sunday mornings. All of it apparently meaningless to the woman sleeping 18 inches away from me. But I wasn't going to cry, not anymore. I was going to make them both wish they'd never been born. Thursday crawled by like a death march. I met with Diana Cross at 3, and she was everything her reputation promised. Sharp, direct, and expensive. Her office overlooked downtown Millbrook, what was left of it anyway. "So, hypothetically, your wife is cheating, and her mother is trying to extort money from you," Diana summarized after I'd laid out the situation. "How do you want to handle this?" "I want them to pay for what they've done to my family. Legally, of course." I smiled for the first time in days. "Of course." Diana leaned back in her chair. "I like you, Jason. You remind me of my ex-husband. right before I took him for everything he was worth. She slid a contract across the desk. Let's discuss strategy. By 6 p.m., I was parked across from the Riverside Inn with a camera and a thermos of coffee. Laura had left the house at 5:30, dressed to kill and reeking of the expensive perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary. She'd kissed me goodbye and told me not to wait up. Scott's silver BMW pulled into the hotel lot at 6:15. He was a good-looking guy, I had to admit. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of slick confidence that probably worked well in real estate. He checked his reflection in his side mirror before walking into the hotel. I waited 30 minutes, then followed. The desk clerk was a kid, maybe 20, with bad skin and bored eyes. I showed him my property assessor badge and explained that I needed to verify some details about the hotel's occupancy for tax purposes. It was complete bullshit, but it sounded official enough. Room 237, the kid said after checking his computer. Registered to Scott Williams. Been coming in regular like, always the same room. I thanked him and took the stairs to the second floor. The hallway was dimly lit and smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. I could hear a TV through one door, someone arguing on the phone through another. Room 237 was quiet, but there was light under the door. I knocked. Room service didn't, Scott's voice cut off as he opened the door and saw me standing there. He was wearing a hotel bathrobe and nothing else, his hair messed up, lipstick on his neck. My wife's lipstick. Hello, Scott. Mind if I come in? Jason, this isn't what it looks like. I pushed past him into the room. Laura was sitting on the bed, sheet pulled up to her chin, her face white with shock. Hello, honey. How's that client dinner going? Oh, God, Laura whispered. The room reeked of sex and betrayal. Laura's clothes were scattered across the floor, her bra hanging from a lampshade like some kind of twisted decoration. The bed was a mess, and there were 2 empty champagne bottles on the nightstand. Jason, let me explain, Scott started. Explain what? How you've been screwing my wife for months. How you think I'm pathetic and stupid. How you can't wait for her to leave me. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd taken. I've read every message, asshole. Every single one. Laura's face crumpled. You went through my phone. Your burner phone. The one you thought I was too stupid to find. I looked around the room, taking in every sordid detail. Nice setup you two have here. Very romantic. I especially like the champagne touch. Really classes up the whole adultery thing. Scott was trying to get dressed, hopping around on one foot while pulling on his pants. Look, Jason, I know this is bad, but what? You're going to make it right? You're going to apologize for destroying my family? I stepped closer to him, and he backed against the wall. You called me a loser, Scott. Said I was pathetic. Said Laura deserved better. I was just what? Just telling the truth? I grabbed his shirt from the floor and threw it at him. Get dressed, both of you. We're going to have a conversation. Jason, please. Laura started. Shut up. The coldness in my own voice surprised me. You lost the right to please me about 6 months ago when you started spreading your legs for this piece of shit. Laura flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. Scott finished getting dressed, his hands shaking as he buttoned his shirt. What do you want? I want you to understand something, I said, moving to the window and looking out at the parking lot. You think you're so smart, both of you. Think you've been playing the stupid husband while you have your fun. But here's the thing. I know everything. Every lie, every hotel room, every time you laughed about me behind my back. Me turned back to face them. And now you're going to pay for it. If you're thinking about getting violent, Scott started. I laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. Violence, Scott, I'm not going to touch you. I don't need to. See, you two made one crucial mistake in all your clever planning. What mistake? Laura whispered. You forgot that I'm really good at my job. I assess property values for a living, which means I know how to research, how to dig up information, how to find out things people want to keep hidden. I smiled at them, and Scott actually took a step back. And I've been very busy the last 24 hours. I pulled out a manila folder from my jacket. Scott, did you know that Premium Properties has a morality clause in their employee contracts, specifically regarding relationships between coworkers that might compromise professional judgment? His face went pale. And Laura, honey, did you know that your mother's little invoice scheme constitutes extortion under Ohio state law, especially when there's a paper trail showing she's been planning this for months? Laura's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But here's my favorite part, I continued, warming to my theme. I had a very interesting conversation with Margaret Hendricks today. You know, from your book club. Turns out there is no book club. There never was. Margaret was very confused when I asked her about it. The silence in that hotel room was deafening. So here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice conversational and calm. You're both going to get dressed, go home, and wait for my next move. Because this is just the beginning. You wanted to play games with my life? Fine, let's play. I headed for the door, then stopped and looked back at them. Oh, and Scott? You might want to check your car before you drive home. Riverside District gets a lot of vandalism this time of year. I left them there, sitting in their shame and expensive hotel room, and walked out into the cold March night feeling better than I had in months. Phase 1 was complete. Now the real fun could begin. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, the dive bar where I used to drink with my old crew before life got complicated. The place hadn't changed. Same sticky floors, same neon beer signs, same smell of cigarettes and disappointment that somehow managed to linger despite the smoking ban. Tommy Brennan was holding court at the far end of the bar, telling some story that had the other guys laughing. Tommy and I had been friends since high school, worked construction together before I got into property assessment. He'd been my best man, I'd been his. Our kids had grown up together. "Jason," Tommy called out when he saw me. "Where the hell have you been? We haven't seen you in months." "Been busy," I said, sliding onto a bar stool. "Laura keeps me on a short leash these days." The guys laughed, but it felt forced. Something was off. "Yeah, well, maybe that's for the best," said Mike Kowalski, not meeting my eyes. Mike and I had coached Little League together for 3 years. "What's that supposed to mean?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Tommy cleared his throat. "Look, Jason, we weren't sure how to bring this up." "Bring what up?" "We know about Laura," Dave Martinez said quietly. Dave was Gus's nephew, worked at the phone company. "My buddy Rick works at the Riverside Inn. He's been seeing her there with some guy for months." The bottom dropped out of my stomach. "You've known for months?" "We didn't know how to tell you," Tommy said. "I mean, what are you supposed to say? Hey, buddy, your wife's cheating on you." "How about the truth?" I snapped. "How about giving me the courtesy of knowing what everyone else apparently knows?" Mike shifted uncomfortably. "We figured you'd figure it out eventually. Besides," added Steve Walsh, "it's not really our business, is it?" I stared at these men I'd considered my closest friends. Guys I'd trusted with my secrets, my fears, my hopes for my kids' futures. "Not your business. My marriage falling apart isn't your business. Don't get mad at us," Tommy said defensively. "We're not the ones screwing around." "No, you're just the ones who watched it happen and said nothing." "What were we supposed to do?" Dave asked. "It's not like you would have listened anyway. You've been walking around with your head in the clouds for years, talking about how perfect Laura is, how lucky you are." The words hit like physical blows. "So this is my fault?" "I didn't say that," Dave backtracked, "but the damage was done." "Actually, you kind of did," Steve said with a shrug. "I mean, come on, Jason. Laura's hot, she's successful, she's got options. What did you think was going to happen?" I stood up slowly, my hands clenched into fists. What did I think was going to happen? I thought my wife would honor her wedding vows. I thought my friends would have my back. Guess I was wrong on both counts. "Don't be like that," Tommy said. "Sit down, have a drink, let's talk about this." "Talk about what?" "How you all think I deserved this. How you've been laughing about poor stupid Jason behind his back." "Nobody's laughing." "Bullshit." I threw a 20 on the bar. "You know what? You're right. It's not your business, and neither am I, anymore." I walked out of Murphy's Tavern and knew I'd never be back. 15 years of friendship, gone. Just like that. But as I sat in my truck in the parking lot, I realized something. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was furious. And fury was so much better than pain. My phone buzzed. Text from Laura. "We need to talk when you get home." I texted back. "No, we don't." Then I drove to Scott Williams's apartment complex. His BMW was in the parking lot, and sure enough, someone had keyed cheater into the paint on both sides. I felt a moment of satisfaction before I remembered that I had bigger plans than petty vandalism. Scott lived in one of those upscale complexes that tried too hard to look expensive, fake stone facades, names like Willowbrook Manor, even though there were no willows or brooks anywhere in sight. His apartment was on the second floor, corner unit with a balcony overlooking the parking lot. I climbed the exterior stairs, and knocked on his door. "What the hell do you want now?" Scott's voice was muffled through the door. "To finish our conversation." The door opened, and Scott stood there looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past few hours. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "I'm not talking to you without a lawyer present," he said. "Relax, Scott. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to make you an offer." He looked suspicious, but stepped aside to let me in. The apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Leather furniture, expensive electronics, abstract art that probably cost more than I made in a month. The kind of place designed to impress women like my wife. "Nice place," I said, looking around. "Must be doing well at premium properties." "What do you want, Jason?" I sat down on his couch without being invited. "I want you to understand the situation you're in. See, I've been doing some research on you, Scott. Very interesting stuff." "What kind of research?" "Well, for starters, I know about the Henderson account. You know, the one where you inflated the property values to increase your commission, the one where you convinced an elderly couple to overpay for a house that's worth about $60,000 less than what they paid." Scott's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. I also know about the Riverside development deal. The one where you had inside information about the zoning changes because you're sleeping with someone on the planning commission." "That's not Laura, by the way. That's Jessica Chen from the city clerk's office. Busy guy." Scott sat down heavily in his recliner. "How did you—" "I told you, I'm good at my job. And when someone destroys my family, I get very motivated to use my skills." I leaned forward. "Here's the thing, Scott. I could report all of this to your boss, to the State Real Estate Commission, to the IRS. I could make your life very complicated." "What do you want?" "I want you to disappear. Break it off with Laura. Transfer to another office. Get out of my life. Do that, and I'll keep what I know to myself." Scott was quiet for a long moment. "And if I don't, then I destroy you. Professionally, financially, socially. I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are." "You can't prove any of this." I pulled out my phone and showed him photos I'd taken of documents from the city planning office. Public records, all perfectly legal to obtain if you knew where to look and how to ask. "I can prove all of it," I said quietly. "The question is, do you want me to?" Scott stared at the photos for a long time. Finally, he looked up at me. "You're not the pathetic loser I thought you were." "No, I'm not. I'm the guy who's going to ruin your life if you don't get out of mine." He nodded slowly. "I'll end it with Laura tomorrow." "Good choice." I stood up and headed for the door. "Oh, and Scott, if you try to warn her about any of this, if you try to turn her against me, I'll release everything I have on you and make sure it gets maximum exposure. Are we clear?" "Crystal." I left Scott Williams sitting in his expensive apartment, staring at the ruins of his carefully constructed life, and drove home to deal with my wife. Laura was waiting in the living room, still wearing the dress she'd put on for her hotel rendezvous. She looked small and vulnerable sitting there in the dark, and for just a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her all those years ago. Then I remembered the text messages, the lies, the laughter at my expense, and the moment passed. "We need to talk," she said. "No," I replied, walking past her toward the stairs. "We need a divorce." The next morning, I woke up on the couch to the sound of Laura crying in the kitchen. She was on the phone with someone, her voice thick with tears and desperation. "Mom, I don't know what to do. He knows everything. He's talking about divorce." I couldn't hear Mrs. Carver's response, but I could imagine it. That woman had never liked me. Always thought her precious daughter had married beneath her station. "No, I can't just deny it. He has proof, Mom. Screenshots, photos, everything." More talking from the other end. "Scott won't return my calls. I think Jason got to him somehow." I smiled and headed upstairs to shower and get ready for work. I had a busy day ahead of me. At the office, I made several phone calls. First to my bank, moving money from our joint accounts into a personal account Laura couldn't touch. Then to my lawyer, Diana Cross, to start divorce proceedings. Finally, to premium properties. "I'd like to speak to your manager about one of your agents," I told the receptionist. "Scott Williams. I have some concerns about his professional conduct." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Janet Morrison, the office manager at Premium Properties. She was a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, the kind of person who didn't suffer fools or tolerate nonsense. "Mr. Fairburn, you mentioned concerns about Scott Williams?" I laid out everything I'd discovered. The inflated property values, the insider trading on zoning information, the pattern of unethical behavior. I had documentation for all of it. carefully organized and professionally presented. Janet's face grew grimmer as she reviewed the evidence. This is very serious, Mr. Fairburn. May I ask how you came by this information? I'm a property assessor for the county. I noticed discrepancies in property values, and when I investigated, I found a pattern centered around Mr. Williams' transactions. It wasn't technically a lie. I had noticed the discrepancies. I'd just been motivated to look for them by more personal reasons. I'll need to investigate this thoroughly, Janet said. If what you're showing me is accurate, Mr. Williams will be terminated immediately. I understand. I just felt I had a civic duty to report it. As I left Premium Properties, my phone rang. Laura, Jason, we need to talk. I know you're angry, but I'm not angry anymore, Laura. I'm done. Please, just let me explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for months. How you and your boyfriend think I'm pathetic. How you and your mother tried to extort money from me. I pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop and put the truck in park. There's nothing to explain. You made your choices. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Scott and I, we connected. You and I, we've been drifting apart for years. So instead of talking to me about it, instead of trying to work on our marriage, you decided to screw around behind my back. And I never meant to hurt you, but you did hurt me, Laura. You destroyed our family. You humiliated me in front of the entire town. And you did it all while pretending to love me. There was silence on the other end of the line. I do love you, she said finally. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the security I provide, the stability, the nice house, and the respectable husband. But you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did. Jason, please. I've filed for divorce, Laura. Diana Cross is handling it. You'll be served papers Monday morning. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to move out of my house this weekend. You can stay with your mother while we work out the details. It's my house, too. Actually, it's not. The house is in my name only. Remember? You insisted on that when we bought it because your credit was bad. Turns out that was a smart decision on my part. You can't just throw me out. I can, and I am. You have until Sunday night to get your things and go. I hung up and sat in my truck for a few minutes, surprised by how calm I felt. For months, I'd been carrying around this weight of betrayal and humiliation. And now that it was out in the open, I felt lighter somehow. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana Cross. Divorce papers ready for review. Can you come in this afternoon? I texted back. On my way. That evening, I sat Beth and Janie down in the living room. They knew something was wrong. Kids always know. But I could see the fear in their eyes as they waited for me to speak. Girls, your mom and I are getting divorced. Beth started crying immediately. Janie just stared at me with those serious 11-year-old eyes. Is it because of Mom's boyfriend? Janie asked. The question hit me like a physical blow. You know about that. We're not stupid, Dad. Mom's been acting weird for months, always whispering on the phone, coming home late, buying new clothes all the time. Beth wiped her eyes with her sleeve. We just didn't want to say anything. I'm sorry you had to figure that out on your own. You shouldn't have had to. Are we going to have to choose? Janie asked. Between you and Mom? No, sweetheart. You're going to spend time with both of us. This isn't about you girls at all. This is about your mom and me not being able to stay married anymore. But we can stay here with you, Beth asked. In our house? In our school? Yes, this is your home, and it always will be. They both hugged me then, and I held them tight, breathing in the smell of their shampoo and thinking about how I was going to protect them from the ugliness that was coming. Laura came home around 8, and the girls were polite but distant with her. They went upstairs to do homework without being asked, leaving us alone in the kitchen. You told them, she said. They already knew, Laura. They're not blind. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd presented me with her mother's ridiculous invoice just a few days ago. It felt like years. I lost my job today, she said quietly. I heard. You did this. You got Scott fired too. I reported unethical business practices. What happened after that was up to his employer. You destroyed my life. I looked at my wife of 15 years, this woman who'd shared my bed and raised my children and promised to love me until death do us part, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. No, Laura, you destroyed your own life. I just made sure there were consequences. She started crying then, big ugly sobs that shook her whole body. A few months ago, those tears would have broken my heart. Now they just annoyed me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Jason. I made a terrible mistake. You made a series of choices over several months. That's not a mistake, that's a pattern. Can't we try to work this out? For the girls? The girls deserve better than parents who hate each other. They deserve better than a mother who lies and cheats and thinks so little of their father. I don't hate you. Maybe not. But you don't respect me either. And without respect, there's nothing left to work with. Laura cried for another few minutes while I sat there watching her, feeling like I was looking at a stranger. Finally, she wiped her eyes and looked up at me. What happens now? Now you pack your things and move out. Diana will be in touch about custody arrangements and property division. And then what? Then we move on with our lives, separately. She nodded and went upstairs. I heard her moving around in our bedroom, opening drawers and closets, packing up 15 years of marriage into suitcases and boxes. I poured myself a bourbon and sat on the back porch, looking out at the yard where my daughters had learned to ride bikes, where we'd had birthday parties and barbecues and all the normal moments that make up a family life. Tomorrow, I'd start over. At 38, I'd be a single father, a divorced man, starting from scratch in a town where everyone knew my business, but I wouldn't be a fool anymore, and I wouldn't be a victim. I'd be free. 3 months later, I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern again, but this time I wasn't alone. Deanna Cross sat across from me, looking relaxed in jeans and a sweater, her lawyer armor set aside for the evening. So how does it feel? She asked, raising her beer bottle in a mock toast. Officially divorced as of today. Liberating, I said, and meant it. The divorce had been brutal but swift. Laura had tried to fight for half of everything, but Deanna had been ruthless in exposing her affair and the financial irregularities surrounding Scott Williams. In